Great. Awesome. Well, Chris, Jahn, it is amazing to have you here as an expert in the self-managed super fund space. You have definitely taught me a lot. We've been on a bit of a journey talking to Australian Tax Office auditors. We've been talking to crypto experts, all sorts of humans in the space, trying to bring it all together. Just a brief introduction from me. I was introduced to Chris by a good friend, Warren, who's certainly an outside the square, living in a different lane of the matrix that a lot of us are wanting to get away from. And he said, Chris is the guy to talk to about self-managed super. And I have been looking for somebody in this space for a long time, having conversations with people that can flex outside the mainstream way of doing things. And Chris, you're definitely the guy that plays between the two paradigms, staying within the rules of what the taxation department wants and needs from us. But more so, what excites me is definitely open-minded, looking into these new ways, crypto assets, flexing, bending, requesting some movement in what the auditors are looking for. So I'll let you introduce yourself and a bit of your background, and let's dive into some of the questions that I want to ask you.
Yeah, my background is I've been a tax accountant for 25 years, and I'm a CPA and also the managing director of an accounting practice. And the last year or so, I've decided to specialise in self-managed super funds. I've been working in that space for 20 years, but I've decided to specialise in that area. So now my journey now is about helping clients move their assets out of the current superannuation system into self-managed super fund, and from there they're buying the assets that are in line with their vision or in line with the assets that they think are going to sort of soldier on into the future. So yeah, I guess like 4 years ago during COVID, I became awake to the agendas that were sort of being played out, and it was a bit of a shock to the system. And so it was a bit of a scary sort of process, learning all about that and realizing how corrupt the financial system is and the health systems are. And now I've got ads in the Light Australia paper, and I am talking to a lot of people that are trying to look for solutions outside of the normal financial assets that are available. So it's been a great journey so far, and it's great for me to be able to help people through that process.
Yeah, it is a bit of a shock to the system. I traveled with Lisa a couple of weeks ago. We were over in Puerto Rico and just talking about when that initial hit really lands about what's going on in the world. Some of us have been on the journey. I've been on this journey since I was 16 years old, figuring out what's going on in the world, human trafficking and the like. So it is really nice to find you, Chris, and find someone that can be in the financial space. And, you know, as Aussies, we are taught and we think it's supporting our retirement to pay into superannuation. And look, I think it's better than not. You know, I think it's definitely better. Paying into super is definitely better than not paying into any sort of backup plan. But here's what I learned a long time ago, and it shocks me to think people still have their money in mainstream superannuation. I figured that was something like don't eat blue food, die. I thought it was like one of those givens that people just move their money over into self-managed. So I'm really excited.
I think 90% of Australians would have their money in the mainstream superannuation account. And
yeah, that shocked me.
Yeah, and those superannuation accounts are, you know, following the 2030 agendas or whatever they're called. So yeah, 90% of Australians are letting someone else take control of their wealth and investing in those agendas, which is against what we want to achieve, I think, for us personally. So
yeah, I agree. So my first question is, like, you know, I just started to get to know Jamin, who lives up the road from me. I hope I've said your name right, bro. We're almost neighbors, and he's like, you know, I just figured out I've got some money still in super. I didn't think I did, and then they mucked me around. So say people on this call, or people we give the recording to, they've got some cash in a mainstream superannuation fund like Aussie Super, any of those sort of spaces, why should they have a chat with you and look at moving it over into a self-managed super fund? And what would be the limitations on that? I know we've spoken to a few people that have said, oh, Chris told me I don't have enough. Can you start to give us an idea of who's the ideal, or who would be qualified to move their money over, and who would be worth having a chat to with you?
Yeah, look, it is important to consider the control aspect of self-managed super funds. So you are taking control of your money. So that's really critical at the moment. And then the money gets from your superannuation, like Australian Super, it'll get transferred into a bank account that you control, and then you're buying investments from there. So your self-managed super fund can be like a bit of a financial lifeboat, because you can invest in a whole bunch of different assets like the nodes, and that's great new technology and significant returns, but also with people like getting gold and silver and also other cryptos like Bitcoin. And even some people like to use their self-managed super fund to invest in farms. So that's a potential for like food security. So
yeah, we had a chat about this, didn't we, Chris? I was really excited when you shared with me that, say, a few of us wanted to go in and buy a farm. Was I right that you can have a caretaker on a primary residence?
you can have a residence. You can have a residence on a farm, if as long as the majority of the property is being used for farm produce, you can still have a primary residence where you can live on the farm. So there are some running opportunities there, but there are quite a few groups out there like Family Farm. They have where you can actually invest money into the farm and you can invest in that farm, and also you can buy the food from them. So they're all people in our sort of awake group, and they're producing great food, and you can buy food. You can, even with the self-managed, even if your investments in the self-managed super fund, you can still buy food and even stay on the land. So
that's so cool.
So you can use your self-managed super fund to buy these nodes, which are outside the mainstream sort of financial assets, and look to generate, great returns with new technology, which is fantastic. And then getting gold and silver, which might be currency that you need or assets that you need to survive.
Yeah, right. And what would be the minimum amount a person would have in superannuation that would be worth looking at moving over into self-managed?
Yeah, look, there is a general guideline as around about 150, 200. That's just a general guideline. There is no legislated minimum amount to set up a fund. You can set up a fund with $5,000 in your fund if you want to, but there are fees and things that apply with that. So people have to consider that. They might get involved with other people into a fund. You can have up to 6 members in a super fund. So if you don't have enough, you can, if you want to, one option is get a group of people together and maybe start your own fund together.
Right. So for a bunch of entrepreneurs that might just have a dwindly little $10,000 hanging around, like I moved my super over years ago. I actually took a lot of it out every time we were allowed to for emergency purposes. I withdrew my super and did my own things with it. But if a bunch of entrepreneurs, you're saying, have, a smaller amount, they can bring it in together. Well, that leads me into my next question of what's actually involved, because I know there are costs involved in setting up a super, but what do those costs cover? What is it that you guys do?
Yeah, so the setup process does take about 4 to 6 weeks. We start with preparing all the establishment documents, and we get the clients to sign all the minutes, the declarations, and the deeds. That comes back to us signed, and then we apply for a TFN and ABN. The super fund has its own ABN, and then the ATO does some checks on the ABN, and they do delay the process, and they can delay it. It's generally around 28 days, which is a bit frustrating for people that want to get their money as soon as possible. So once we get and our team will keep checking with the ATO to see when it's ready to go. once we get the green light, we instruct the clients to set up a bank account, and then our team will organise the rollover for clients, and then the clients have to contact their old super and provide some certified ID, and then the money is rolled over into the bank account. So we're seeing that process take usually around about 4 to 6 weeks, and then they've got their money, and then they're starting to invest from there.
And my understanding, because we're putting my partner through this process, because I like to do everything first and before I recommend it. So we're starting the process with Dan, with you, Chris, and I know he needs to set up a digital ID with the government. Can't avoid that. We're still in the government quasi system, guys. So it's not like you can totally, flip them the bird and tell them to piss off. We're still playing within the two paradigms. So we're setting that up. It's a bit painful, but as soon as we get that done, then we're setting up like a company trust structure. And that's what you guys do. That's what we're paying you guys to do, because we can't do that ourselves, right?
Look, there are ways that you can set up the company and super fund yourself. There might be ways that you can do it. There might be platforms online that if you wanted to do it yourself, you could. I guess the benefit of having someone like our team do it is that we're doing this day in, day out. We know all the problems that you might occur. We make sure that it's set up properly. Some people get stuck if they do it themselves. So
right.
And
then you guys do all the accounting and reporting for the structure, the new entity that is now in the super fund, the self-managed super fund.
Yep. So if clients were to set up a super fund now, the fund would become active in July, and then there would be some annual compliance for the 2026 year. That compliance wouldn't be due for lodgement until potentially 2027. So there are some compliance costs and annual fees from the ATO and ASIC and auditing, but those first fees wouldn't be applicable until quite some time down the track.
And they can all be claimed back as part of the setup, right?
That's right. Like the super fund will have money to pay for its ongoing compliance and administration costs.
Yeah, fantastic. And look, and the compliance is pretty hectic. Like even, what you and I have been talking about and talking with the ATO about the compliance around node purchases as a crypto asset, which I was excited to just receive an email back just before this call with a pretty bright green light. As long as we tick all the boxes. And even, I consider myself pretty smart and savvy. And even ticking all those boxes feels like a pretty heavy load to take on board responsibility-wise myself. So tell me about the compliance that you guys as a firm look after on behalf of the new entity for the person setting up a self-managed super fund.
Yeah, so part of our service is preparing the financial statements and the super fund tax return. So we need to get all the information for the fund, all the transactions that have occurred during the year, and we've got to track the transactions and the movement of, say, crypto or rewards, that sort of thing. We have to get reports on that. So people do need to have the ability to make sure that they print out the reports. And the great thing with the Connect group and our link is that they do provide the reports that we need. So, and then there are some great software out there, like Crypto Calculator. They can actually track the movement of the crypto. So we can do the reports that are required to lodge with the ATO.
And just say somebody had a self-managed super fund already, and I know there's a couple of people on this call that do have a self-managed super fund already. And, I know, and I'm not going to put anyone under the bus, but I know a few people have been pretty cheeky and they've bought their nodes out of those accounts already and things like that. What's the risk involved just willy-nilly doing that? Like, I know it's been pretty heavy conversations with you and the finite detail that you've been asking some of our crypto OGs, that's made me really want to put my self-managed super in your hands so I don't get caught with any tax fines and all sorts of things that go on.
Yeah. So it's really important that the investment purchases are in the name of the SMSF. That's really critical. And it's really important not to mix your nodes or the rewards or mix it with your personal situation. It's really critical that it stays in that SMSF structure. And if it did get, and that would be a really big problem if it somehow got mixed in with your personal nodes.
Gotcha.
So someone would have to try to unwind that and try and work. It'd be very hard to work out. It just would cause a problem with doing the accounting. So that would be a really big no-no, mixing it with your personal assets. Yeah.
And what are the benefits? One of the points you spoke about that excited me is the potential of being able to utilize super earlier than traditional superannuation, and the tax-free benefits of having a self-managed super fund.
Look, there are ways where the super fund can loan to its members. If you can, there is a 5% in-house asset test where we've had some clients who've loaned themselves under that 5% of the net assets. They've loaned themselves some money to buy a car or do some investment in their own name. So there is that opportunity. If people wanted to get access to the money, they can access a small amount. And also, I think your other question was with tax-free with superannuation. So unfortunately, the tax-free aspect only comes later when you turn 60. If you had $1 million in your super account at 60, you could put that into pension phase, and that fund becomes tax-free.
That's pretty lucrative.
Yeah, and I don't think most people probably wouldn't realise about that. And one of the aspects of our work is when the clients turn 60, we will remind them that, okay, there might be an opportunity to make your fund tax-free. So that can provide some great taxation benefits for clients.
And so in your opinion, and this is more of a personal interest question, I'm always thinking of things while I'm talking to you. I don't have any super, self-managed or otherwise anymore. I moved all mine out and into just other investments. When you say that, I feel like as part of my investment portfolio to have, like, at the age of 60, and I'm not that far away, like I'm 45, so I'm not close, but I'm not far either. I kind of feel like if I'm planning on making a lot of money, I'm hearing the words tax-free make sense to start an entity and have some self-managed super just to safeguard, $1 million even.
Yeah, if you were making really good income in your own name, you'd want to be putting contributions through. You can put up to 30,000 contributions in 1 year, and that's a great tax deduction in your personal name. So you're moving money across into super and getting a tax deduction for doing that, and building up your super through those contributions and trying to push your money into that superannuation environment, which can become tax-free. So,
and for any of the couples or business partnerships on the call, are you saying that we can amalgamate, like I could do that into my partner's self-managed super fund?
Yeah, like if you had high income, if you might start doing really well from the nodes and generating really good income, you could make a contribution to super into that fund with your partner. You have to be a member of the fund, but you could contribute into the fund and claim a tax deduction for that money going in.
Interesting. So this is all the stuff you guys know that we don't know. I like it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of tax loopholes as well with super. Like you can, most people don't know about this rule called unused super, where you can go back 5 years and catch up on any unused superannuation cap. So normally it's 30,000 a year, but you can go back the last 5 years. If you haven't used up that cap, you can push it forward, bring that cap forward, and make a large contribution in 1 year if you needed to. And that might work if you're selling an asset or selling an investment property you might have a big capital gain. So your clients are generally, in most cases, accessing that unused super rule to claim as much tax deduction as possible against that investment gain.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. And there are lots of loopholes too. Like there's heaps of loopholes with super.
And I imagine a lot of things come down to people's individual situations and circumstances and finances. So, guys, we're going to leave cost questions to a one-on-one call with Chris, because it's a very individual situation for each person, depending on the amount of super, how many super funds you've got, all that sort of thing. So I don't want to start taking up his time. As you can imagine, Chris has taken some time out of his very busy day working with clients one-on-one. This isn't an entry-level kind of conversation. This is for a person who has an amount of super and you're serious. There's enough information on the internet that you can go and do your own dabbling for free. I don't want to waste Chris's time with people who, are just wanting to ask basic questions. So that's why I put on this call. But if you've got a question about self-managed super, I'll let you read that, what Jamin just wrote. But if you've got questions about self-managed super that aren't just specific to you, drop them in the chat thread or come off mute and ask the question. Otherwise, where we're going to go from here is if you can contact me directly. I'm going to try and take some of the admin off Chris. He's a very, very busy human dealing with lots of individuals. Contact me directly with your details, and Chris will book a call with you. We're kind of qualifying you a little bit first, so I'm helping out in that space. But if you can find me on Facebook or WhatsApp and send me a message directly, I will put you in one-on-one contact with Chris and he'll book a call and have a serious conversation with you. But yeah, did you want to say anything to what Jamin's just written?
I haven't heard about that case. Yeah, I'm not really sure about that case. I'd have to get back to Jamin on that one. I'm not sure about that case, actually. So,
yeah, perfect. Cool. All right, guys, if there's no other specific questions, we nailed it in 30 minutes. Excited. Thank you so much for your time, Chris. This is recorded, so it will be available to all of you to send out to people who might be interested in superannuation moving over to self-manage. But like I said, the next step...
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris.
Sorry, Ange, we don't charge for a first introductory meet, like a chat, just to go through some questions. We won't charge for that first meeting.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. And we don't want to waste your time either. So I'm happy to help have that bit of administration and get people's details and book you in a call. But yep, find me, guys, in WhatsApp or ask whoever brought you to this call. And I'm happy to do an introduction to Chris and give you his details. Otherwise, we'll see you back here for any other questions, Chris.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your time, Ange. Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. See you guys. See everyone.
Good luck.